What's going on, all you Facebook and YouTube live fishermen out there? Got a decent show here. I'm sharing out my stuff. If you guys don't care to give it a share, I'd appreciate it too. But got a pretty cool show today. We're going to talk about why I suck at fall fishing. I'm going to show you guys what I do. I'm going to talk to you about what I do and how I'm doing it. And I'm going to let you guys tell me what I'm doing wrong, because I cannot, for the life of me, it seems like, catch fish in the fall. So with that being said, right after this short intro, we're going to get right into it.
Gotta get your arms way up in a cast and set the hook on smallmouth bass, and then you'll understand. Gotta get your hands on a Shimano reel and a G-Loomis rod. I bet you like what you feel. Step on the deck and give it a whirl. Hello, welcome to my world.
And we're back. As the song says, welcome to my world. Those of you guys who may be new to the channel or new to the stream, my name is Tyler Waller. I like to talk fishing, and I am no way near a professional. I like to fish. I fish a lot. I'm probably on the water over 100 days a year, and that's because here in Ohio it gets too cold for several months. Usually between mid-December to early March, it gets brutally cold. It doesn't get cold enough to have hard water or ice season. So it just gets cold enough to not want to be out there. So it's all good. So we're going to talk about today what I've been doing lately in the fall that has not worked. And as funny as that sounds, is that it's weird for me because I absolutely love fishing this spring. Summertime gets tough. Fall, sometimes you can catch them. But you would think the spring and the fall would kind of, similarly line up, but that's just not the case for me anyway. And the areas that I fish. So we're going to talk about what baits I'm using, what I'm throwing those baits on, and the areas that I'm targeting that are not working. I'm not saying that these baits don't work, because I do catch fish on them all times of the year, but it's just really tough for me to find fish in the fall. So with that being said, let's look at some things here that why does fall fishing suck? Well, fall fishing sucks in my area. It may not suck in your area. If you're down there in Alabama or Florida or Georgia or California, fall fishing may be totally different than I'm used to. But the area that I fish, fall fishing for me is the least favorite time of year for me to fish. It's the absolute most beautiful time of the year. I love the fall change of the colors of the leaves. I love the temperatures. The water normally gets super clear, which is probably a disadvantage. And a lot of times after Labor Day, the boat traffic stops on the lakes I fish, and also the only hardcore anglers are out there chasing the bass. You're not going to have most weekend anglers out there, going out in 30-degree water or 30-degree weather to try to catch a bass. What's up, Adam? Hey, buddy. Yeah, so man, I appreciate you sticking around. I'm back. Like it or not, I'm making a run at it this next year. I said that this past year, and it got life happened. So my goal is, right now I'm about almost 4,000 subscribers. I have a goal for 2,000 plus subscribers next year, and that's going to take a lot of work and a lot of determination on my part. So I appreciate you sticking around. It means a lot. So I'm with you, man. Like, I don't hunt that much anymore. Matter of fact, I haven't picked up my bow in probably 6 years in a way of hunting. I love bow hunting. Matter of fact, that's how I got into the filming things. That's how I got, my know-how of editing video and things, is that we started a video production company for a while that was dedicated to filming whitetail hunts and turkey hunts and things. And we had a blast. But it's just something I just don't get into anymore. I love venison meat. I love deer meat. It's some of the best on the planet. But I would much rather be out on a lake chasing a giant, largemouth or a smallmouth, as opposed to, shooting a deer anymore. I used to gun hunt with my dad one day a year, obviously just to spend time with him. And I'm not doing that, obviously. But I get it, man. I tell you what, this past weekend I went to a place down in West Virginia with my buddy J.R. White, and we should have been deer hunting. If you guys out there are deer hunters in Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, you need to be in the woods now. The deer are absolutely running does everywhere. Last night I went out to put my truck in the garage about 10 o'clock last night, and I heard some rustling on my heel, and there's a street lamp there. And I looked up, and there was 2 bucks getting ready to fight in my backyard, which I have a deer feeder and stuff up there too. But they're absolutely chasing right now in this area, which is pretty cool. But again, I think I need to find something. Somebody mentioned on one of my Facebook posts today that I need to be muskie fishing, and I think that's what I want to do, because I've over the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks of fishing, I've caught just as many muskie as I have keeper bass, and that's the truth. I've got 1 keeper bass and 1 probably 35, 40-inch muskie out of the Ohio River. Hey, Mark, what's up, buddy? That's good to hear. Bass around here are not. I've been after them 3 weeks in a row, 3 weekends in a row. Went out today. Thankfully, I get the day off because of Lecture Day and being a teacher. One of the reasons that we get a Lecture Day off is the fact that they have poles at our high school, and it's just a safety issue. When you have all those people coming in there, you don't want them around all the kids. So they give me the day off, which I'm super thankful for. So I went out and done some fishing today, got my teeth kicked in at a lake here in my area called Grayson Lake. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about what I was throwing, where I was targeting, and I still don't know why I can't catch fish. And I'm with Adam. Like, when the water turns over, it's really tough for me to catch them. Obviously, when the water is turning over, and if you don't know what I mean by the water turning over, is that there becomes a time where the water on the lower side of the thermocline is warmer than that above that's on the top due to air and rain and things, could be snow, causes that water, heat rises, the warmer water is going to rush to the top, not rush, but it does come up to the top, turning the lake over, and causes the lake to get murky and muddy and have a really like tannic look to it. There's not much oxygen in the water when that happens, and the fish become lethargic because they can't really breathe that well. Really tough to catch them when the lake's turning over. But just after that, the water seems to get super, super, super clear for me in this area, and I just can't catch fish. I don't know what's up with that. Wow, man. Yeah. I hate to hear that she was on chicken zeroed, but that's the way it goes, man. I've been to chicken zeroed too. Matter of fact, Misty has the biggest fish of any time we've went. She got one that was a little over 5 pounds. Missed it on a jerk bait. And I told her to throw in there. She was throwing a swing head and threw in there and hooked a 5-pounder. It was a super nice bass. It was really cool to be able to experience that with her. Yeah, walleye sauger are running right now in the Ohio River, which is a big deal. A buddy of mine told me he caught 26 yesterday. They were short, caught one that was a keeper, so I may have to break out the old spinning rod and some jig heads and twister tails and get down and see if I can't lean on a couple of those. But, right now is a time for me that's weird to try to learn how to fish. So when you look at the water temps when it comes to fall, in my opinion, I feel like the early fall is going to be August probably, and you're going to be looking at 75 to even 90-degree water temperatures wherever you're at. It's going to be cooling off. And getting into that fall transition period where the bass, now the water temperature is cooling off, but not only that, but as we get into the later into the fall, the days get shorter. Days don't know time change. There's no such thing like that. They, biologically look at the moon and the sun phases and the, how much daylight that they have. And they're understanding, they're the way that they're looking at as far as their biological makeup is that, it's just like in the spring when the day starts getting longer. That's when they're actually starting to get into the spawn and, pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn, depending on where you're at. As the days get longer, but now we're in that fall transition period where the days are getting really short. Obviously, definitely for us when we have daylight savings time, but we're looking right now. I got up this morning at 5 o'clock this morning, showered, got up, got my boat, drove, got some gas in my boat, and was at the lake about 6:30, and it was getting daylight. And so I fish. So it's about, we have about probably 12 hours of daylight probably right now, 6:30 to maybe 6:30, probably right around 5:30 now, I'd say. So probably about 11 hours of daylight. And fish are starting to sense that. But not only that, but the water temperatures are cooling off. So that's something that you have to actually take into consideration when you're actually fishing in this time of year. And I've tried to do that. And we're going to talk about how I'm doing that today. And the mid fall, I think, is about 65 to 75. I figure that's September probably, into October. And then towards Halloween and then now into November, I feel like we're getting into that late fall. Somewhere between mid fall and late fall is where you're going to get that water turnover. You're going to have you're going to have, it usually only takes about a week for that lake to totally turn over. But what happens is when the lake turns over, a lot of silt and stuff gets brought up with the gases and stuff that are being brought up to the surface. Again, causing the water to be really muddy and murky and look really tannic, like almost like a saltwater fishery for a while. And during that week, it really, really is tough to catch fish because, again, the fish, there's not enough oxygen in the water during that time. And that's something that I'm going to key on in this presentation here, is talking about where the oxygen is where the bass are going to be, in my opinion. And then you're going to be looking at winter, which in my area is anywhere from 35 to 45 degrees. You're not going to get much lower than 35. You get to 32 degrees, it's going to freeze. Again, in my area, we don't get hard water. It doesn't freeze at all, even on the surface. I've seen some like skimmed ice across like Grayson or even on the river at some points, but I've never seen any lake that I ever fish it gets totally solid enough that you can even walk on it. It's usually, coated with ice for a day or so and then gets warm enough to melt that ice off. So you're looking at somewhere between the 35 and 45 degree water temperature in my area. And the thing about it is, what's so weird about my situation is I feel more confident in catching a bass in winter at 35 to 45 degree water temperatures than I do in that 45 to 65 range, which is super weird to me. And I don't know why. So I'm spending the next couple. I'm going to spend this, this winter trying to read up and do some more learning and understanding about how a bass feeds in the fall. I mean, I know personally that when you find bait fish, no matter where you're fishing or when you're fishing, if you find bait fish, you're going to find largemouth and smallmouth bass. That's just the fact of the matter. Fish are no different than most other people on the planet. They care about a few things. One of those is eating. The other one is making sure they can breathe, obviously, but that's just a biological thing. Eating and basically reproducing, and that is it. They really don't have any other wants or needs on the planet other than that. And then they go on their merry way. They also don't have a plan of eating my bait, but I'm fixing that. So when you look at the water temperatures, again, we're in this fall area here, the 45 to 65 range. I was out at Grayson Lake today. When I very first put my boat in the water, according to my Humminbird, Solix was 57 degrees. I fished in Deer Creek. If you're are from this area or Grayson Lake, Deer Creek is left of the main ramp. I went back in there because there's a lot of flatter banks. The water's a little more shallow back in there. I knew there was a big chunk rock bank at the very back of it, and I knew that there was a big giant flat in there. And the reason I chose that flat is the fact that I thought that last night, which is probably something else that hurt me, I'm sure you guys know, but we had a blood moon lunar eclipse last night, and it basically took place from about 4 o'clock in the morning until about 7:30 this morning, where the moon was covered. So I don't know that had anything to do with it, but it could have. Who knows? I know usually a full moon causes shad spawn, so that's what I was heading for. I knew that a full moon, usually in the springtime especially, causes a shad spawn, and that normally happens in the fall in the backs of creeks. So that's the reason I chose to go back in there. And when I pulled back in there, I saw so much bait fish activity. It was unreal. I'm talking so thick, I felt like I could walk across Deer Creek in nothing but shad. And there was fish in there absolutely blowing those things up. I never could get an eye on what they were. Couldn't tell you. I assume they were striper. I know that there's a ton of striper in Grayson. I've caught several of them. But there was so much bait fish activity and so much bigger fish activity that I cannot help but think that some of those were largemouth. I've never seen a smallmouth bass in Grayson. I've heard told that there are a few in there. I've fished in there for 10 plus years regularly, almost every weekend, and I have never caught one. But I think Nate Witt has got a picture of a decent sized smallmouth that he caught out of there. But I've never seen one personally. Wow, man, that's crazy. That's all. That's a good day. Heck yeah, I take 20 in a day any day. Unless I'm at Lake St. Clair, then I'll consider that a bad one, bad day. But that's awesome, man. You caught some fish like that. That's great. Now, let's talk about what I am doing, and let's break down what I'm doing wrong. Maybe you guys can help me out here. Again, I don't claim to be a professional. I'm just learning. If I ever think I'm an expert fisherman, I'll quit, because that's not what I'm trying to do. I just like fishing. I don't spend enough time on it. I spend a ton of time fishing. Like, if I'm not fishing, I'm thinking about it. But I've just started recently in the last 2 or 3 years learning how to fish, to understand how to fish in proper, different places. Like, for example, if you were to put me on a lake and you would put Jacob Wheeler on a lake that we've never been in our entire life, that dude is going to find them and he's going to figure them out way quicker than I am, because he knows where fish are going to be. He knows how they think. He knows how they pattern. He knows them. That's why he's a professional. I'm striving to get there, but I'm just an average Joe. And this is how these are some baits that I threw today that I throw a lot of times in the fall. A spinnerbait. Spinnerbait is probably my go-to in the fall. There's a ton of different types of spinnerbaits. I'm going to show you one here that's not my favorite. It's a booyah bait. I throw strictly tackle box spinnerbaits just for the simple fact is I feel like they're the best ones on the planet. It's not because Greg Drown's a buddy of mine or it's my favorite, tackle shop. You guys all know that. I think his buzz baits and his spinner baits are second to none on the planet. I love them. I absolutely think that they're amazing buzz baits and spinner baits, and they catch fish. I am super confident in them. I've caught fish all my life on them. I've saw some absolute hammers caught on them. Matter of fact, I think Whitney Stevens actually fished some of Greg's spinner baits in one of the Bassmaster Classics that he was fishing. So that's one of the things I throw at. Normally it's a double willow leaf blade, which I'll show you in just a second. Normally I'm throwing white. My favorite on the Ohio River is what he calls the Goldie, which is kind of like a limited edition now, because the skirts that he was getting from this company for these Goldie spinner baits are discontinued. He can't get them anymore, which is it's like shout to the heart. It's one of those things. Like, I was like devastated when he told me he couldn't get a hold of it anymore. But gold spinner baits, I really like those a lot. Fall or muddy water, I throw a chartreuse. But I also throw the sexy shad pattern or whatever with a white with just a few strands of chartreuse on there. Really good spinner baits. I normally throw a 3/8 ounce, almost exclusively. I've been throwing a half ounce a little late in the fall and stuff. I've personally caught more fish on a 3/8 ounce than I have a half ounce, and I'm trying to gain some more confidence in that half ounce bait. You can work the half ounce bait slower than you can a 3/8 ounce, which is weird to think about, but the more drag that you have, the blades are a lot bigger on that half ounce bait. So there's a lot more drag in the water. So when you're reeling your bait, you could actually slow roll that bigger spinner bait slower than you can the smaller one, because again, there's less drag on the blades. So that's why I started throwing the bigger spinner bait, is that I feel like that I can work it slower. We are getting into that late fall period where the water's cooling off. The days are getting shorter. So I want to do as much as I can to keep the bait in the strike zone for the fish as long as possible. So that's why I think that half ounce spinner bait is better than the 3/8 in the fall. You can fish it a lot slower. I do think they're both great. I personally don't fish a trailer on my spinner baits. I do fish a trailer hook, usually a 1/0 Gamakatsu spinner buzzbait trailer hook. I usually exclusively fish those. Again, a 1/0 On the back of my spinner baits and buzz baits, it's a must for me. I feel like that I catch a lot more fish, and it seems like I catch more fish on the trailer hook than I do the actual hook, which means, maybe that's where that actual trailer, like a twister tail or something, may come into use there, so it has something to lock onto and bite as opposed to biting the blades or just the skirt. The jerk bait is probably my number 2 bait to go to in the fall. I fish I fish a lot of different ones, actually. Hey, Bill, what's up, buddy? Oh, yeah, the old Kentucky fishing group. Those of you guys out there, if anybody's from Kentucky and you want to get into some good conversation, head on over to Bill's group, again, Kentucky Fishing on Facebook. I've learned a lot over there. It's pretty cool stuff. But the jerk baits that I throw a lot of them, to be honest with you. I think that they're all I don't think they're all created equal. Matter of fact, I don't think there's any of them that are created the same. My favorite bait on the planet is a Jackal Re-Range 110. I've lately been upping that to the 130, just to have a bigger profile. I figure that when the bass are feeding up into the wintertime, they're going to want a more substantial meal because they know that it's going to start getting cold soon. So they're going to feed up for the winter. They're going to want to do less work for the most, gain and the most protein that they can get in a bait. That's why I step up to that 130. I'm going to talk about in a second, I'm going to show you guys the bait, but the Jackal Re-Range 110 and 130 actually have a weight transfer system in there that I feel like allows you to cast the bait way farther than any jerk bait that I have. But if you own a Jackal Re-Range 110 or you've never thrown one, when you get it out of the package, when you throw it the first time, I'm going to tell you that it's going to absolutely scare the living daylights out of you. The weight transfers from the head to the tail when you cast, and I swear to you, it sounds like your line snaps every time. It's got this sound, and it sounds just like you're casting a bait off. Amazing stuff. That's awesome, Herb. I was just talking to JR that telling him we need to hit the river. I should have went to the river today, to be honest with you. I threw topwater today for a while, didn't get a single sniff on it, and I don't understand that, to be honest with you. Water temperature, again, 58. When in the back of Deer Creek was 60 degrees. Should have been absolutely perfect for a topwater bait, especially in the morning. Just couldn't get them to bite it. I throw a Jackal Re-Range 110, 130. My next favorite jerk bait is a Rapala Shadow Rap Deep. They make one it's like a 7, I think, or it's actually a 9. It has like a hump on the back of it. I like it a lot. It dives a little deeper than the Re-Range 110 or 130. That gives me that mid-range. Also, there is a Shadow Rap that's actually a lot deeper than that. My favorite jerk bait of all time it was an Edwin Evers signature series made by Excalibur. It was called the E Squared. And that thing absolutely caught fish, but it was the biggest piece of crap on the planet, man. You would hit one rock or something and the bill would break off, and I'm talking snaps clean off. I've got like 15 of them laying around here on a key ring because the bait, the blade or the bill, has snapped right off of them. But they absolutely used to murder fish. I don't care what time of the year you threw it, it was definitely going to catch you a fish. And again, they stopped making them Edwin Evers. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure Excalibur is still in business. But that E Squared jerkbait was really cool. I really liked it a lot. Oh, yeah, the Berkeley Fritzside 9. JR threw the Fritzside 5, I think, in a new collar he showed me the other day. It was kind of like a camo crawl pattern. I don't know what I'm calling it that. That's not it. It's like a darker crawl pattern with an orange belly. I really liked it a lot. Those flat sides are really good. Not only just a Fritzside, you could get into the KVD, one of the flat side 1.5s. I like the... Again, the Fritz sides are really good for that. I do like the crap. Let me Google it up here. I want to make sure that I'm not butchering it. Yes, the Spro Little John 50. I like it a lot. I like the Type R, the Little John Type R, which is a rattling bait. Love it in the fall and the spring. It absolutely murders fish. I love that thing. It's probably my favorite crankbait right now. Lipless crankbait. Strike King Red Eye Shad. We all know that. You could also throw, the old school, the rattle trap. I mean, the rat L trap. The one that we've all caught fish on a million times. I do have some of those. Jackal, the Jackal TN60, the TN50, 60, and 70 is what I throw. I like those because they have a tungsten lip on the bottom of them, and it causes the bait to run more at a like a nose down way. Allows me to get it in grass and rip that thing out of it, as opposed to a rattle trap, which has a more flat running. It actually nose down a little bit, but not like the TN60 or 50. When I get the nose hooked up in grass, I can rip it out as opposed to having the hooks getting hooked up. And having grass, it's weird, but unless you have a reaction strike, it's really tough to get fish to eat something with grass on it. I mean, I don't think I would either. Ohio River, man. Don't. I'm just playing. So the river can be amazing. It can be great. I've seen some big bass caught out of there. Biggest one, 5-6 pounds out of the Ohio River. I do feel like the river is kind of making a comeback on smallmouth bass. I feel like that you catch more smallmouth out of the Ohio River right now, especially in my area, which is the Greenup and Meldal Pool area. And then if you go like upriver from me would be the Gallipolis Pool there at the Robert C. Byrd Locks and Dam. It depends on the time of year, man, but I'm going to go, especially this time of year or any time, a white spinnerbait is great on the Ohio River. Topwater, as Herb mentioned, a buzzbait, spook, popper. I have a lot of luck on a 1.5. I would say I've caught more fish on the Ohio River than any other bait in my life on the Ohio River on a Zoom speed crawl. I've started Texas rigging it like just a green pumpkin. You can fish any color you want to, Bubby, as long as it's green pumpkin. By the way, if you guys don't know where that's from, there was a guy that caught me on me and Kyle on the river or on the ramp at Grayson one day, and we were talking about fishing. He's like, "Yep." He said, "What have you been throwing?" We told him. He's like, "Well, collar." Well, whatever. And he was like, "Well," he said, "What have you been throwing?" Well, it's kind of like Henry Ford used to say, you can have any color you want as long as it's black. And he said, you can fish any color you want to, Bubby, as long as it's green pumpkin. And that's a pretty good color to go with. Green pumpkin, the Zoom speed crawl. Don't go with the speed crawl, like the Magnum or whatever the bigger one is. I feel like it's too big, especially on the river. I've caught a ton of fish on a Sexy Shad 1.5 on the river, the silent one. Seems like it catches a lot of fish. 3 to 4 inch swim bait, depending on where you're at. I've caught a lot of fish on a 3-inch swim bait, half-ounce head. And I've caught some fish on a shaky head. It just depends. Again, so it's really tough. You're going to want to fish high percentage spots on the Ohio River because it's not that great of fishing. So you're not going to want to spend, half hour of your life fishing a mud bank. If it's mud, you're probably not catching fish. Let me know when you're heading out, and I can try to give you some better tips as it goes when we're looking at it there. So let's look at some of these baits that we're talking about. And again, this is not my favorite bait. I don't have a picture of one. I fish exclusively tackle box spinner baits. They are, again, they're made with light wire. The hooks are sharp. He does a great job at painting them. He has the skirt that he uses. The skirt material is amazing. Dude has a crazy selection of them too. 2 years ago, I did a contest for his. He has an open house every February. It's right around Valentine's Day weekend every year, and I will go up there and work it with Shimano and G Loomis. So I go there, and I gave away a Shimano reel one time, and I had people online guess how many spinner baits and buzz baits he had in his store. And it was an astronomical amount, man. Like if my memory serves me correctly, it was like 6,200 buzz baits and spinner baits collectively combined. he's got everything from 1.5 ounces down to 1/4 ounce and all that stuff. And obviously not 1.5 ounces on a buzz bait, but he's got giant spitter baits, that you would throw for muskie and things that he builds. Great stuff. But this is the style of bait that I'll be throwing. This is this has one willow leaf blade, which is the one there that's elongated. It says Terminator on there. And the one there below that is a Colorado leaf blade. Most of my baits that I throw from the tackle box are dual willow leaf. So instead of having that little Colorado blade there on that, you would have a willow leaf blade on top and on the bottom. I feel like that it's more streamlined. In the fall, I should be throwing big Colorado leaf blades, I think. It needs to have a lot of thump. I know that works in the springtime. I figure that's probably going to work in the fall. So maybe I'll switch that up and throw some of the little bigger blades so get a little bit more thump on it. I personally don't throw anything that has colored blades on it unless it's gold or silver. I don't throw painted blades. I know a lot of people have a lot of great luck on white and chartreuse or white and blaze orange baits, especially for smallmouth. I just can't get into them. I know that it works with the way I'm throwing it, so that's the way I like to keep it. But I throw this bait a lot of times strictly white a lot. Again, imitation of bait fish there, shad, threadfin. It could be wherever it's imitating basically a ball of bait. It's tough to understand that, but you have multiple blades, so it looks like multiple multiple minnows or what have you swimming together. There was a company, it might have been Live Target, that had a bait ball crankbait for a while that kind of looked cool, but kind of fell off the deep end because nobody fished it. I think it was like a gimmick, but that's what you're looking at here. You're looking at, something that's imitating bait fish in the fall. Finding the bait fish is imperative. It's crucial. It's where the fish are going to be. They have to eat. And again, today I found more bait fish than I've ever seen at Grayson in my entire life. They were just thick in there, and things were just absolutely blowing these things out of the water. I'm talking like everywhere. I had my boat all the way. I've never been this far in Deer Creek in my life today. I just said, screw it. I'm going to the back of this thing until my trolling motor won't go anymore. And I got to the point where the water temperature was getting colder as I went back in there, so I swung my boat around. But I was in water, below my front trolling motor of a foot deep, which is pretty cool for my Stratus to be floating in it. It's probably 2.5 foot of water at that point. Obviously, it's a little deeper than that because my troller motor's in the water. But 2.5 foot of water to float a 21.5 inch or 21 foot, 21.5 foot bass boat is pretty cool. I was back in there, found some grass, there was shad everywhere. I was throwing the spinnerbait, looked similar to this. I had double willow leaf blades. Couldn't get them to eat it at all. So I was like, well, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to throw topwater. So I grabbed a spook out of my, actually it's one of the Spook Juniors, is a smaller one, because the shad that I was seeing were about 2 inches long. So I fired this white spook out and was working on top of the water in this big giant school of shad all across this big flat that was 10 foot deep. Never once had a blow up, even though these fish were just destroying bait. So I was like, well, maybe these bait fish the fish are eating the ones that are lower in the water column. So I was like, well, you know what? That's where the jerk bait is going to come in to play for me. And I thought to myself, well, if these fish are going to be eating the fish that are going to be just a little bit lower in the water column, I'm going to go for the Jackal Re-Range 110, which is the one on the left in this little thing here. The Re-Range 110, again, if you notice there in the tip box, it has a weight transfer system that allows you to cast the bait farther. And it does work. I will tell you that. Not because it's my favorite bait. It does allow you to cast the bait farther. It feels like the bait becomes like more solid when you're casting it, and you can absolutely throw this thing a 1/4 mile, it seems like. But you're going to have to get used to it. The first time you pick up a Jackal Re-Range 110 and you cast it, I promise you're going to be like, well, there went that bait $15 later. It sounds like your line breaks every time. But the Jackal Re-Range 110 is going to be looking at that 3 to 6 foot probably of diving range there. I like it. I saw Mike Iaconelli the other day, maybe it was on TikTok or something, and he gave a really good explanation of why you should use nose down or nose up. And he said that if the water is warming, then you want the nose to be up. If it's cooling, you want the nose to be down. So what he did was he took a suspend strip and actually made that happen. Well, this bait right here is one of the most well-balanced baits I've ever seen. When it suspends, it is almost horizontal in the water column and will stay there as long as you want it to. My biggest thing about fishing a jerkbait, especially in colder water, is making sure that you, one, change your cadence up on that, and two, make sure that you are giving that bait ample time to soak, because 90% of the fish that are going to hit a jerkbait are going to hit it while it's suspended. There are suspended jerkbaits that slow sink. There's some that slow rise. There's some like this Jackal 110 that actually just stay right in its place. That's why I like the Jackal Range 110 a lot better, because it stays in the same spot. Now, mind you, if you're not in that if you're not in that in the strike zone of these fish, it doesn't matter how long it stays there. You know, fish are going to feed up, which is something that you have to think about. If you're dragging your jerk bait below where the fish are actually going to be at, you're probably not going to catch fish, because they very rarely feed down unless it's right on the bottom. Fish, you know, their eyes are more towards the surface of the water, and they normally 90% of the time feed up, depending on you know, what they can see. And if there's vibrating bait or something like a lipless crankbait that's under them, you might get them to hit it then. But it's not going to be something that they're going to like, you know, 100% do. On the right hand side right here is that Shadow Wrap Deep, and this is the 9. Again, you can see the back of that bait is actually humped up there a little bit more. This one dives a little deeper. You're talking about from the 6 to 10 foot range there. So I threw the Jackal Range 110 and all this bait fish, and I was snagging some shad. And again, they're about 2 inches long. They were just absolutely perfect size. It looked like a red eye shad, and that's where we're going in just a second. So I was throwing the Jackal Range 110, and I was hooking some of the shad, so I knew that I was coming through the bait fish then. When I got to throw the little deeper jerk bait, I wasn't snagging any of those shads, so I knew that I was working my bait underneath those bait balls. So I thought that those fish were coming up underneath and eating those fish, and they obviously are, but they were not eating my jerkbait. I don't know if I was working it too fast or too slow. I tried to work it super fast like I would in the, you know, in the summertime or in the late spring. No avail, obviously. I tried the old Mark Zona done a show 10 years ago now, probably. He was fishing it was like a power plant cooling pond, and it was like stayed like 70 degrees all year round. You know, it was like 100 degrees in the summertime, but like it was like there was snow on the ground. There was a bunch of steam coming off the water, and I think it was him and Mark Rose that were out there throwing jerk baits. And he had a thing that I still say to this day. He said, you know, you just jerk, and check your email. Let that baby soak, man. That's where it's at. I feel like, again, I don't know that I've caught a fish while it's been moving. The biggest fat fish I've ever caught on a jerkbait in my life was at Rocky Fork 3 years ago. Myself and my cousin Josh were fishing a tournament with Pedro, throwing that exact same bait that you see on the screen right there, the Shadow Wrap Deep. It was funny. You can go back and watch the video. It's out there on my YouTube channel. But we were talking to this fella. He was like 75 to 100 yards away from the bank, and he was out there fishing. And we were fishing the bank, and I was having a conversation with him. I was like, hey, man, do you care if we go between you and the bank? Because he was like anchored out there. He was crappie fishing. He's like, oh, man, no problem. You know, go do whatever you got to do. And we're having a conversation about finding mushrooms, and he was going to, you know, some morel mushrooms, and he was getting some crappie to go with it. So I make a cast, and I turn around and look at this guy, and I jerk the jerk bait twice, and I'm sitting here talking to this guy for what seems like 15 seconds on the film or on the video. And then when I jerked the bait again, the fish had already had a hold of it. So he either ate it or she either ate it like immediately, or it was like forever when it was suspended there. And I think it was forever because I started working that jerk bait uber slow that day and caught a bunch of fish. Matter of fact, I think Jacob Crappie was throwing a jerk bait that day as well, and he told me the same thing. He ended up winning the thing, I think. And he's like, man, he said, we're just letting the jerk bait soak. He's like, it's got to be there forever before a fish will eat it. Again, down there on the little tip thing, Free range 110, weight transfer system. You got to get used to it, but I feel like it is a good deal. Now, these are two lipless crankbaits that I throw. Lipless crankbaits could be anything from jackal to the rattle trap to red eye shad. It could be spro. I don't care what you throw. They're basically all work the same. They're going to have the same action. The top one there is a jackal TN60. And again, I like that. If you look at that little gray area on that TN60, that's a tungsten weight that allows the bait to run with a more nose down like orientation of it. And the reason I like that is because, again, I fish this thing. My favorite way to fish a lipless crankbait is to cast that thing out and let it sink all the way to the bottom. When it hits the bottom, I'm usually yo-yoing that thing up. So I'll rip it. If it's summertime or late spring, I'm really ripping that thing. Like, I want it to come off the bank or off the bottom and then slowly come down, and then rip it off the bottom and slowly come back down. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. But I feel like, especially if you're fishing places like Gunnersville, Wheeler, and places like that have a lot of grass, having that thing nose down when you're ripping it up off the bank, or if you're reeling it and having it barely tick off that grass, I feel like there's an advantage to having those hooks guarded by the body of the bait. Whereas this red eye shad, great bait, I love it. I throw it a lot, especially the orange collar in the fall, or I'm sorry, the spring. But it runs nose down, but it doesn't run as steep of an angle as this jackal TN60. Now, with all jackal baits, you have to understand that all jackal baits they're more expensive than you're going to find here in the United States. Like, you can pick up the Strike King red eye shad for about $6.99, I think, at the tackle box. That same jackal TN60 right there is going to cost you $15. One of those is because it's tungsten. The other thing is that it's it's a Japanese bait that I get a question all the time. I am a part of the Shimano Pro staff through the tackle box, and I represent Jackal, Power Pro, Shimano, and G Loomis. Well, Shimano owns G Loomis. They've owned him for 20 years, or a little over now. And then Power Pro and Jackal are not owned by Shimano. Shimano is a distributor of those products. And the Jackal products, I like them. They're a little more expensive. The hooks are really sharp. You're getting tungsten in them. I like them a lot. I throw the Re-Range 110, 130, and this TN60 a lot. That's awesome, man. Yeah, that's one of my favorites there. I like that one. It looks like that one has white on the bottom, but I like the chrome one there. What's up, Larry Slack? Hi, buddy. Thanks for joining. Duo Jerk. So that's the Duo Realis or whatever. That's pretty cool. They make some great baits, man. And they're in the same deal as Jackal. They're expensive. But what isn't anymore, guys? It's crazy. When you think about it, like, I was thinking about it the other day. A guy was joking with me, and he was like, "It's about time for you to get a new boat, isn't it?" I was like, I don't know, probably not. I said, I'm just going to run my old boat until the motor blows up, and I'm going to put another Merc on it, and I'm going to call it a day and fish it until it blows up, and I'll probably buy another one. I was like, I like my old boat. And he was like, well, why don't you just sell your boat and everything you have in it to me? And I was thinking about it. I was like, man, how much money would I have to sell my boat for to get all the money out of it that I have and feel like that I got a decent deal? And it is an absolute astronomical number. Like, I own a 2006 Stratus 201 Pro XL with a 250 E-Tech Evinrude on it. I feel like with the Solix that I just added, I feel like it's a $25,000 boat probably. But I figure, like, I probably got $15,000 worth of gear in it. So it's crazy to think about. And everything is stupid expensive anymore. But most of these baits, I stick with a natural collar, especially I try to match the hatch of the fish that are within the bait fish area that I'm fishing. That's why I picked up this red eye shad that you see on the bottom. I threw this exact bait right here on top, which is a TN60, which is a little bigger. It's about 3 inches long. And then I started to remember when I hooked those shad on that jerk bait, they were about 2 inches long. I mean, they were absolutely perfect. Matthew Strickland, if you're out there, they would be absolutely amazing to throw on a 6-aught and put it 20 foot deep at a pay lake. That's what I'm talking about. So, I grabbed the red eye and threw it. And I'm telling you what, guys, I threw this thing. I threw every bait that was an imitation of a bait fish, swim bait, red eye shad, the TN60, the jerk bait, the spinner bait, a buzz bait, a spook. I threw it across this, but I'm talking just a load of bait fish, and I never once got bit. That's where I think people, like Aaron and everybody that's running Garmin LiveScope have an advantage over me, because they could have live scoped underneath this bait and found the fish where they're at and casted to the fish, whereas I was just fan casting this entire thing and hoping I got bit. Well, you got to know the fish that are eating these things are moving. They're trying to get, they're moving along, and then eventually they just try to eat one, and that's the end of it. But that is where I see that as becoming a major, major, major advantage, and something I'm definitely going to be looking into. I think my goal here over the next year is to buy a new trolling motor, which is going to be probably an Ultrex, which means I'm going to have to add a new battery. Right now, I'm only running a 24-volt Minn Kota Fortrex, which is an amazing trolling motor. It's been amazing. But I would have to add a new battery unless I wanted to jump the fence and buy a Ghost, a Garmin Ghost. Because, or actually, is that Lowrance that makes that Lowrance Ghost? But anyway, the Ghost trolling motor, but because it will run on 24 and 36 volt, it has a switch that you can run it on 2 batteries, which will give you like 80-pound thrust. And if you put a third battery and switch that switch to 36 volt, you get like 112, which I thought was really cool. But that's where that advantage comes into play. The Humminbird 360 is something I'm going to add to, and that's another reason why I won't buy a new boat, is the fact that I'm just going to set my boat up how I want it, and that's already expensive enough. You look at the Solix 15 I just put on my boat was $3,500. You're looking at a new trolling motor, which is $3,500. Probably looking at $250 for a new battery. Everything that I want to do to my boat over the next year is $7,500 to $10,000, and that absolutely floors me. It's crazy to me, but it is what it is. These two baits, especially this time of year, I try to stick with the natural collars to match the bait fish that are in their area. However, I love the TN50 and Escape Crawl in the spring. It's like a red orange crawl pattern, phenomenal bait. Matter of fact, the first time I threw it was with the Shimano Experience team like 5-6 years ago. Actually, it's been longer than that, probably been 7 years ago, with Ethan and those guys, and he brought one out of the package, and he was like, this is probably the only one of these that exist in the United States right now. And I fell in love with it that day. He made about 7 casts with it and broke it off in Grayson. It like, see you later, about 30 foot of water. So that there's still one in Grayson Lake back in Greenbrier if you guys are back that way and you hook one. Now, where are the bass? Well, it goes without saying that if you're going to find bait fish, you're going to find the bass in the fall. That's what I thought. That's why I found all those things. Again, I think the full moon today, I thought shad spawn, back of the creeks. I went to the back of the creeks. I was 100% true when I come to the shad back in there, because the shad are moving up the creeks or up, away from their deep haunts in the summertime, because there's more oxygen in those shallower areas. It's also a little warmer. That's where the bait fish are going to be, and I feel like that's where the bass are going to be. I found the bait fish. I found some sort of bass, probably a striped bass, a striper, or a hybrid there. I couldn't get them to eat them either, which is weird, because normally a striper will absolutely crush anything you throw at it that is imitation of a bait fish. Weird to me. That's why I think some of them were big largemouth, and it's really tough to fool an big old girl, small or largemouth, when she has the real thing to look at and she's eating those things. Really tough to say. I fish a lot of things, main lake points, especially flat points on main lakes going into like main lakes or secondary, tertiary points in those creeks. That's why I chose Deer Creek again today, because there's a bunch of points coming out into this creek going back through there, and it gets more shallow and more flat as you get back in the back. Again, my hunch was 100% true. I saw the bait fish. I just couldn't get the fish that were eating them to eat what I was throwing them. Again, anywhere I see bait fish, plain and simple. You find the bait fish, you're going to find fish. They have to eat. You're going to find some fish. It may not be the right fish. And again, that's why I think that live scope and active target and all these things that you could physically see the bass or the fish that you're actually targeting gives you an absolute advantage over anything else. Because finding bait fish, matter of fact, the guys that won that tournament at Grayson or Yatesville there a couple weeks ago, I know for a fact they were finding bait balls and live scoping them. And if they saw fish underneath them, they could catch them. And if they live scoped it and there was no fish with them, they just went to the next one. And that's how they won the tournament. I also like the chunk rock banks because I feel like they hold more heat and it's going to cause the water to be a little bit warmer. Water clarity in the creek was absolutely crystal clear, which was another downfall for me. As I got farther into the creek, it started getting a little more murky and a little more muddy, but I'm talking like out where those fish were at, the bait fish, 10 foot of water, probably a good 6 foot of visibility. But it was early morning that I was fishing there. It was about 6:30. I was back in there. So I fished Deer Creek in the back from 6:30 to about 10:30, throwing every bait because those shad were popping everywhere and they were just getting munched. And then all of a sudden, 10:30, they were gone, man. They never were popping. I never saw fish eating them. At 10:30 in the morning, they were just gone. I don't know if they were moving deeper into the creek or whatever, but I couldn't see them. So I spent the rest of the afternoon taking my Solix, and I was just cruising around, and I would find a school of bait fish. And then I would fish those bait fish because normally they're going to be in the same area, and I fish around them, throwing those baits that I was throwing to no avail. I did go into one area, and I saw 2 fish on my graph that were big enough that I could tell that they were fish on my mega imaging. I could see their fins. I could see their tails. Couldn't tell you what they were, but they were not hungry. I'm probably putting them into the 3 to 8 pound range, probably a carp or a striper. Still couldn't get them to eat. Obviously, I couldn't get them to eat if they were a carp. I understand why. If they were a striper or a largemouth, have no clue why they weren't eating the stuff I was throwing at them. But the water clarity was good, I think. It would probably been better if it was a little more murky, obviously. Now, last thing we're going to talk about is what I throw these baits on. I'm not going to bore you to death with this stuff. We're right at that 1 hour mark, so I appreciate you guys sticking with us today. Again, we are back with On Another Line live every Tuesday, working on trying to get some people involved and getting some new people to talk to on here. Quick shout out to Matthew Strickland, by the way, which I mentioned earlier, but he is a junior at Wheelersburg, and I think it's Wheelersburg. I'm pretty sure he goes to Wheelersburg, but he just signed like a letter of intent to fish with college. I think it was Kentucky Christian there in Grayson. Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong there, but he fished a letter and he signed a letter of intent to fish with Kentucky Christian. Yep, that's it, man. Kentucky Christian University in Grayson. Matthew Strickland, buddy, that is amazing. Glad you're doing that. You're keeping me proud, but I know your dad's proud of you. So absolute hammer on the water. Great kid. So what combos am I using for each bait? Well, let's go back and let's just skip back through this stuff right here. Spinnerbait, I'm throwing a spinnerbait on normally a 7.3 medium heavy poison adrena. I have this rod paired with a 7 gear ratio Metanium core solid. I throw this with 12-pound Sunline FC Sniper. That is my go-to when it comes to spinnerbaits. Again, the rod makes all the difference in the world because I feel like that medium heavy, having that extra length, that 7.3 gives me casting ability. Also allows me to set the hook a lot better. Sometimes, though, I've seen people throw spinnerbaits on glass rods because of the more parabolic bend. My buddy J.R. White talked to me. I was talking to him on the phone today, and he gave me an idea. He's like, hey, man, I think you should do a show on why do you pick certain rods and reel combos for baits. So that's going to be something I do on my YouTube channel as a whole episode. But a parabolic bend on a crankbait rod or a glass rod is going to allow you to have the rod load up a lot better before you set the hook. If you're anything like me, when you set the hook, you get a bite or you feel a rock or whatever, you're just ready to rip that thing's lips off. and that's the way I am. So with the parabolic bend of a glass rod or a crankbait rod, you do have that opportunity. The spinnerbait rod, you're probably going to want to stay away from something that's super fast action. The 7.3 medium heavy Poison Adrena is more of a moderate fast action. You don't want to throw this on a jig worm rod or something that has super fast action or super fast taper, because you are going to want to you tend to jerk that fish out or that bait out of the fish's mouth. Next for my jerkbait rod, my jerkbait is thrown on a Poison Adrena rod also. I have a 1611, which is so how you read most Shimano rod series is there's like one or two. Well, one is a casting rod, two is a spinning rod. So if it's like a 1611, that's a series 1, which is a casting rod. 611 is 6 foot 11 inches, and then it has the action after that, which is a medium plus. So the 1611 medium plus Poison Adrena is what I throw my jerk baits on. Absolutely phenomenal. I throw it on the reel I have is actually a Chronarch CI4, which they discontinued. And the reason they discontinued him because the brakes that they used on the external brakes, the centrifugal brakes, if you didn't oil them properly, they would squeak and squall. So you always know when you need to oil that reel, because you'll throw it and it just sounds like the thing's about to fall apart. Throw some oil around the metal ring that's in the side plate for the centrifugal brakes, and that stuff quiets right down. It is also the lightest weight combo that I own, with that CI4 Chronarch on there and that 1611, phenomenal rod. You can fish it all day. Most people like a 6 foot 10 inch rod, something smaller than that, maybe even 6'6". The issue there is when you're working your jerk bait, you're not hitting your boat or you're not hitting the actual top of the water, which will cause your cadence to be off. So a smaller rod, again, I use a 611 medium plus Poison Adrena. With the lipless crankbaits, this is going to be something that I just now picked up, and this is weird that all three of these rods are Adrenas, but I've been throwing this on a 7.2 medium heavy glass rod. Poison Adrena, I really like the glass. Again, more parabolic bend. Get up in grass or whatever. When you rip it out of the grass or rip it out of whatever it's stuck on, it's going to bend and then kind of shoot that bait out of there, so you get a more fast action and letting it sink. The glass rod I love a lot. If I was going to throw a lipless crankbait on another rod, it would be a 906C CBR IMX Pro. That is an absolute monstrosity of a rod. It's 7 foot 6 inches, 6 power. I'm telling you what, but you can absolutely skyrocket a lipless crankbait. You can throw it farther than any bait I've ever seen, especially if you throw something on there like a Crowder DC. So that's going to basically do it there. Places I target, the combos I use for each bait. And that is going to do it for tonight's show, guys. I appreciate you guys sticking around. We're at that 58-minute mark. You guys know I like to keep everything about an hour in length, and that is what we're going to do today. So we've got a couple videos coming out over the next week for you guys. Again, myself, J.R. White, have been to a place in West Virginia twice now. He caught 3 or 4 fish the first time. I didn't catch any. We went back last weekend. He caught 2 fish, and I caught 1. I know there has to be some absolute hammers in there, so I'm going to go back in the spring. Really, really cool. Yeah, Matt. Seriously, man. Congratulations. That's a huge honor, dude. Like, it's not like, I know that you're probably like, yeah, it's just fishing, or it's just, it's like that's cool stuff, man. So keep that up. And when you become KVD, like, name a crankbait or something after me. That'd be cool. But guys, I appreciate it. The support. We're back live every Tuesday. Unless something crazy happens, we'll see you guys next Tuesday, but we'll have some videos coming out before then. Yes, let's go to Beach Fork, guys. Holler at me. Shoot me a message. Let's go. No, it wasn't Beach Fork, but let's go. This is a 9-9 lake, which is Beach Fork too, but not down there. What's up, Brandon Buckner? Yeah, man, I like to lean on, but I can't. You know how that goes. But anyway, you know what to do. If you guys can, get out there and lean on them. We'll see you next time on Another Line.